Yeah, so obviously you're an online coach, but you don't just become an online coach to begin with. So what got you into the gym to begin with? Was it sports, and then you sort of made that natural transition to the gym, or what was it?
Yeah, so I was always very active as a kid. I played a lot of tennis and football. Those were kind of like my two main sports. And because of being that active, I could pretty much just eat anything and not put on any weight. So I was like naturally very, very skinny. And before any sort of growth spurt, I was always pretty short as well. So that combo in an all boys school where everyone's playing rugby and going to the gym and they're bigger than you, it's kind of like, I don't really like this. I want to do something about it. And I think so I've been training now for about a decade, just over a decade. So started when I was 15. And at that age, you are, going to house parties for the first time, like socializing a little bit more, and just being in those scenarios, like brought front and center to me the fact that I was like a lot shorter and a lot skinnier than most people. And so that was my entry point into the gym. I was keen to just put on as much muscle as humanly possible. And that was kind of the goal essentially. But yeah, it's been 10 years and it's definitely not been plain sailing all the way through, for sure.
It sounds like we've had a very similar sort of entrance into the gym. So I also joined the gym, it was 11 and a half years ago now, when I was also 15. I was coming off the back of a 6-month growth spurt where I grew literally like 8 inches in 6 months, which was painful to say the least. But at the same time, I hadn't put any weight on really. I was just over 10 stone and I was like 6'2" at the time. So I assume you've had also a bit of a growth spurt yourself, because we met at IFS like 18 months ago and you're similar height to me.
Yeah. I think it wasn't like a sudden one. It was more sort of towards the end of school. So when I was like 17, 18, and then the start of university as well. So I don't think I stopped growing properly height-wise until probably like the end of my first year or start of my second year. Yeah. So I'd say tongue-in-cheek to people, I've lived as a short man and I've lived as a tall man, and I know which I prefer.
Which one is it?
It's being taller. No offense to my short things out there, but
yeah. See, I was in the gym filming the other day, and I actually envy shorter people a little bit when you're trying to film, because how hard is it to get
like an angle shot? Like that looks like
any angle, or just fit in the screen, like especially when you're doing landscape, you've got no chance unless the camera's literally on the opposite side of you.
Yeah That's where I'm grateful I don't do YouTube, but you obviously do, so you've got to face that struggle. And then when you're actually lifting, like for a lot of people, if you're shorter, like deadlifting, you get down to the bar a little bit easier, bench press, like less range of motion and whatnot. So yeah, I've had like gym buddies that I've trained with over the years that have been shorter, and like I just look at the numbers they're putting up, I'm like, oh my god, I'm so jealous.
I have the same. I've got a mate who's 5'8", so like he was actually bigger than me at the end of year 10, and by the time we started year 11, I was like 4 or 5 inches taller than him. Like literally at school, teachers thought they had like a new pupil because I'd grown that much over the summer. But I've been to the gym a few times with him as well, and he's not that consistent with it, but can still throw up a decent bench, mainly just because of like how much shorter his limbs are. And he looks at me as if to say, like, George, you've been going for ages, why can't you do heavy? And I'm just like, look how much longer my arm is.
Yeah, I hear that.
But so obviously you got into the gym when you were 15. How old are you now? 25? 25. So at what point did you think about becoming a PT? Was that always in the plan, or was that something that happened because of maybe you starting a fitness Instagram? Like, how did it all sort of fall into place?
So it was as part of my degree. So I studied psychology and business at uni. So up until 3 years of university, I hadn't really thought about getting into any sort of fitness career. As part of my degree, I did a placement year. So I did a year working in industry. So that was the third year when it started to crop up into my mind, and that was because I did a year as a recruiter in central London, recruiting for compliance officers for like banks and asset managers. Essentially, they're like the internal police of these financial institutions. So they get paid a lot, but it's like quite a dull role. Anyone that works in that,
I've done a bit of it myself.
Yeah. But also the recruitment industry as well is very very salesy. Like the process of recruiting doesn't really change the more you do it. You'll maybe work with different jobs, but fundamentally the role is similar. The people that I worked with that didn't necessarily like what they did, they just liked the money that you could get from it. And then also you spend all day talking to people who are unhappy in their jobs, and you ask them like why they're unhappy, and they're looking for that happiness in another job. And you're like, well, realistically, I know this thing is not going to make you happy. Like this looks very, very similar. You might earn a little bit more, but fundamentally, I don't think it's going to change anything for you. And so being exposed to that sort of opened my eyes to the thought of like, surely there's more to life than, finishing university and getting a grad job, which had always been my sort of dream, I guess. Like I loved the idea of working in a suit up in central London and that sort of thing.
What sort of job would that have been going into? What was the plan?
I didn't really have that work that far ahead, to be honest.
Just a suit in
literally,
London.
That was literally what I thought. Because my older brother and sister, or well, not so much my older brother, but my older sister went down that route. Worked or still works at Deloitte in their big fancy offices and stuff like that. So I think I maybe watched a few too many episodes of Suits as well. I don't know if you've ever seen that growing up, and that kind of glamorizes that whole thing. I was never going to be a lawyer, but I just liked that.
Just wanted the suit.
Yeah, essentially.
That was the main pull.
Pretty much. So anyway, so that year made me think like, oh, maybe that I do want to do something else. And I don't know, I maybe heard this phrase quite a lot of like, do what you're passionate about, or, what would you get up early in the morning to do? And I was literally getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym before work. So like get up early, stand on freezing cold train platforms, get into St. Paul's Cathedral, like central London, and go and work out before then doing, 8:30 to 6, like contracted hours, but more like 8 to 6:37 in an office. So I was like, oh, I'm actually quite passionate about the gym. That was like the first time I really realised it. I was like, the fact that I can get up and do this 5 days a week obviously shows I have interest. So that kind of was the opening of fitness as a career. And initially I actually wanted to go more down, or set up my own startup. So I don't know if this was something that we were planning on touching on slightly later, but I was like really keen to start my own company and be in that sort of tech startup scene. And I didn't have an idea for that yet whilst I was doing this placement year, but I just knew that I was like passionate about fitness, and I knew from listening to like podcasts and stuff that one thing which might hold me back would be being uncomfortable being in new scenarios, because I don't necessarily put myself in uncomfortable positions very often. Like socially, I'm very comfortable and stuff like that. So I was like, what can I do right this second to kind of put me outside of my comfort zone? And the first thing that kind of came to mind was posting videos on social media. So that was kind of the entry point into that whole world of online coaching. Was my final year of university, coming back from that placement year and starting to post content online, essentially.
Thank you very much for watching this clip of the podcast. If you'd like to see the full episode, click here. If you're new, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed it, please drop it a like below. Thank you very much.